present For the Record with Neil Heinen.
The Madison Community Foundation and United Way of Dane County working together. Next on For the Record. Thanks for joining us. I'm Neil Heinen. The Madison Community Foundation and United Way of Dane County are pillars of the foundation of the greater Madison region. They're fundamental to the civic infrastructure upon which for many decades we have built community and a shared vision for the future. It's always required of both organizations a willingness to regularly define mission and execution and a relationship that's not always widely understood. Recently, the two institutions offered an update of how they work together to strengthen our community, and it is, among other things, a recognition of changes brought about by demographics and technology and culture, and by the assets of two dynamic leaders. I welcome to For the Record United Way of Dane County President and CEO Renee and Madison Community Foundation President Bob Sorge. Welcome, you two. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
I love this idea. Over the decades, the challenge of people really understanding the roles that your two organizations play. And so to be able to both redefine them, but also talk about new changes, I think seems really beneficial to me. Where did this start? What's the genesis here?
So I think that when Bob and I started in our roles, we had heard this ongoing narrative that people didn't really understand the difference between United Way and Community Foundation. And there were a lot of questions about, is there duplication? Because we share some volunteers, we share some donors, and obviously we both care greatly about the health and quality of life here in Dane County. So it really started from that conversation.
We had also just hired a new person in research, Andy Davey, and as we were talking about this and didn't feel like there was that kind of overlap or redundancy, I said, well, Andy, take a look at this. And so he looked at 1 year, he looked at 5 years, and I think we were both shocked at how little overlap there was. So there was a 4% overlap in the organizations we funded in 1 year in 2017, and then he looked over 5 years, and there was a 20% overlap over a 5-year period of the organizations funded. So much less than I think the community thought. And one of the real benefits was we also saw a spot where we could collaborate more. So it's sort of like the Community Foundation is working on arts and environment and community development, the splash pads and libraries. United Way is working on financial stability and health and education. And that education, that learning is a piece that we both work on. And so we've been talking more about, okay, if we're both working on this, how do we leverage the work that each other's doing?
I think this was a little bit of a reminder to me that we just can't take for granted that people know what you do, and despite the fact that you would expect people to, because I think of the roles you play. And without getting too deep into the into the history and the Madison war chest from which you both sprang, maybe just briefly talk about a little bit of the beginnings of United Way and the Madison Community Foundation.
Absolutely. So in 1922, it was the business community and philanthropists in Dane County who said there must be a better way to aggregate resources and distribute them across nonprofits in Dane County. So those were the beginnings. Over time, fast forward to around the 70s, 80s, businesses were looking at corporate social responsibility for the first time and really leveraging United Way to be able to do that inside their companies. Another 10, 15 years later, and businesses were saying, okay, what are you actually doing to reduce and eliminate the root causes of some of these challenging issues? And that's when United Way really sprung forward with the agenda for change and doing much more convening and cross-sector collaboration and really knitting together nonprofits to focus on root causes and solutions and metrics to solutions and to issues. So, and now we're looking at innovation again in terms of how the community wants to come together and solve problems, these root cause issues. And that's what United Way is all about. How do we convene, become the backbone for some of these cross-system collaborations to make sure people's giving and advocacy and volunteerism gets more done for the community?
You've offered this explanation before, haven't you?
Oh,
very succinctly done, Renee.
I love this one.
United Way had been around for a couple of decades before the Community Foundation formed, which I think is an interesting comparison.
Absolutely, about 20 years. The Community Foundation was formed in 1942, and it was formed as GIs were coming back from World War II. The idea was, are we going to be able to provide the services that these returning veterans need when they get back to the States? The GI Bill subsequently was passed and took care of a lot of the things that the Community Foundation, at that time, the Madison Community Trust was going to fund. And so one of the things we've been fortunate for in the last 75 years is United Way is such a strong United Way in Dane County and really does an excellent job in its focus areas. And so it allowed the Community Foundation to evolve to really think about, what is a different way to approach the same issues in our community. So, for example, if you create a community that people want to live in that has strong arts, so we funded Overture Center and Monona Terrace and parks and bike trails and things like that, you strengthen the tax base because people build condos downtown, and the tax base helps the city and county pay for services. So you have kind of two arms that are working on strengthening our community together. A little different perspective, but very effective in managing those two halves.
Yeah, I think the notion of a lack of overlap or very, very little overlap is important. How do you describe the fundamental differences between the organizations?
So the fundamental difference is we're really focusing on the here and now root cause solutions for our most compelling issues.
Yep.
So we're talking about family stability, right? Strong, healthy people make strong, healthy families. That leads to strong neighborhoods and schools and a workforce and society. So we're really investing in parenting and housing stability and employment, making sure that educational pathways are there so people can have self-sufficiency and self-reliance. And when you look at what we're doing to make sure the community is safer, knitting together law enforcement and leaders of colors, for example, or case managers who are working in homelessness across Dane County. It's these kinds of collaborations that get us farther together than we could alone.
And MCF then looking at more legacy.
Yeah, we're a permanent resource for the community. That's our core value proposition. And so people love this community and they want to see it strong not only during their lifetimes but during their kids' lifetimes and long after. And so they invest in the Community Foundation, and we use the resources that they provide to continue to give back to the community, year in and year out over generations. And building those wonderful things that make this community a community that we love, and bringing people together to celebrate our quality of life in Madison and Dane County and the region is why we exist. And working with the United Way, we really do approach the community from those two different standpoints.
Well, when we come back, we're going to talk about the future and the idea of working together that you both have been working on recently, and we'll do that right after this.
For the Record, sponsored by MG&E, your community energy company.
No one sells more. Wild Automotive sells more SUVs and all-wheel drives combined than any other dealer. Wild is the #1 volume SUV and all-wheel drive retailer in Southeast Wisconsin. The more we sell, the more you save. WildAuto.com.
For the past 40 years, the pulse of the city has been found within these pages of Madison Magazine.
I've been a subscriber to Madison Magazine for about the last decade. Madison Magazine is one of the few places in town where you can read long-form journalism about the stories that really do impact the greater Dane County area.
Madison Magazine is the region's most influential publication. Every month, our team works so hard to deliver the best in food, dining, arts, culture, politics, and business.
I love Madison Magazine for the in-depth topics. You'll be able to read more about camping, the arts, sciences, topics that make Madison a great place to live.
Don't miss out on the pulse of the city. Subscribe today at MadisonMagazine.com. I'm Emmy Fink, and you're buzzed into Madison. Cheers.
The skills you can develop in the Army National Guard can give you an edge in the high-tech job market of tomorrow. The Guard offers career training to take advantage of your interests in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Gain practical experience with emerging technology and equipment that you can transfer to an exciting new field. Get a head start on your career while serving part-time and earning money to pay for college. Visit NationalGuard.com to learn about all of the STEM career opportunities available to you in the Army National Guard.
No one sells more. Wild Automotive sells more SUVs and all-wheel drives combined than any other dealer. Wild is the #1 volume SUV and all-wheel drive retailer in Southeast Wisconsin. The more we sell, the more you save. WildAuto.com.
About a month ago, Madison Community Foundation and United Way of Dane County issued a report on how the two organizations work together to strengthen our community. And we thought it would be a nice opportunity to have on the president and CEO of United Way of Dane County, Renee, and Bob Sorge, the president of the Madison Community Foundation, to talk about that. So this idea that I think some people have that you must be competing for dollars, that there's probably a limited pool, and even in a generous community, people are making decisions about how they want to invest their money. How do you describe that competition, or maybe lack thereof?
Well, you know, I think people support the things that are important to them, the approach they want to take to the community. And so I don't often think about it as a competition. I think about us telling our story and what we do, and that'll either resonate with people or it won't. And we also help tell United Way's story about what they do and how they are focused on needs today. And so some people, you know, want to approach our community and make an impact immediately. Some people want to do it over time. Some people want to do it with in health and human services. Some people want to do it in infrastructure. And so I don't really think about the competition, because ultimately it's not up to us. It's up to the donor, what they want to achieve and how they want to achieve it.
And I don't know how many people know this, Renee, but the United Way does have a foundation.
We do.
But it's very separate.
Absolutely. Just as the Community Foundation has an annual fund. And a number of years ago, many of our donors said, you know, we'd love to have a way to perpetuate United Way's giving into the future. And our foundation exists to support the mission of the organization. We also have a fund at Madison Community Foundation. It was one of the largest seed dollars for a community foundation way back in the beginnings. And so it's complementary. And I agree. We don't see this as competition. Donors really need to decide where they want to invest. And, you know, it's people care deeply about people and investing in families, investing in children, investing in the future through people, as well as the infrastructure and the arts and the quality of life that we all really admire about our community.
If I can add something on there, you know, one of the fundamental parts of Renee's and my relationship is that we met in Rotary. And Rotary has a very distinct set of values that are about integrity and honesty and fairness. And I think our relationship, having started there, has really grown out of that. And so it's enabled us to talk about a lot of these things that have been kind of around the edges for decades, and now we're able to address them directly and feel like I trust Renee, Renee trusts me, let's move this forward.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because when I think about Rotary, when I think about who's in that room, these are people who really do understand the relationship and have been very, very supportive. So, of course, the challenge is the broader community, which continues to grow and change. And so the idea of this new environment in which you're both working, leading your organizations as Madison changes in so many ways, and as I mentioned in the open, just the change in technology and people's perceptions of that, how has that influenced, or maybe how does it show up in this new idea about working together?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, innovation is really a thread through United Way of Dane County's history, and partnership also is a great thread. And so I think that as you're looking at how the community is changing, we need to continue to evolve with the times. How employees want to engage with businesses is different. How businesses want to engage is different. And so we're really trying to meet people where they're at, whether it's more engagement and education through volunteerism, whether it's more technology-based giving, but ultimately it's all about relationships and continue to have the relationships, share the story, and do the great work together, and helping people find the niche that they want to invest in across the community, wherever they want to do that.
You feeling it, the change?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because we look at it from two perspectives. One is we've made commitments to people for the long term, and a lot of those people aren't here anymore, and so we can't go back and ask them and say, well, you know, we're going to evolve this. So we really want to be very cognizant of those commitments and to honor those commitments long term. At the same time, we recognize that the way you get things done evolves and changes as well. And you know, I often think we're very proud of the resources that we have to distribute every year. Last year, we distributed, together with our fund holders, $15.5 million in the community. But when you think about the budgets of the city and the county, you know, $300 million, the school district's $300 million. You know, where can we affect the most change? And so, one, you have to partner with other people. You have to have a collaboration moving forward to get things done. And two, you know, are there other ways than giving directly? You know, we've explored lots of things. I've asked Renee's advice on, you know, they're kind of dipping their toe in policy. I don't know if we're going to go to policy or not, but how do you create the most change for the most people in a positive way?
You know, the generational components of this are fascinating to me. And to me, you know, Greater Madison's human capital, our capacity, seems a little younger. You know, that there's beginning to be a shift. both in leadership, but also in who is staying here and starting businesses here. How is that playing out in this change of vision?
Yeah, it's invigorating.
Yeah.
I mean, really to hear new leadership, hear how new ways of that business is getting conducted, much more consumer-driven, much more quick in terms of design thinking and seeing what works and failing quickly and learning quickly. And so that really, influences how we're doing changing in our community too, which is how do you listen to families, what do they need the most? How do you listen to donors, what they're looking for? How do you listen to nonprofits and service delivery sector? And so, that expectation of it's less about the title or less about cascading through and more about what's working and how do we get things working faster and at scale. That's really an exciting thing, and that's something that new generation of leadership is really bringing.
This is the first 6-month window for me, I think, that Gen Z has become sort of part of the lexicon now, and it begins, it's this now gradual shift from the millennials to Gen Z.
Well, and responding to how our communities operate nowadays. So I think we're all sorry to see Superintendent Cheatham departing. One of the things that I learned from her early on when she was talking about addressing the issues in the school district is, back in the 1950s, you had a family who would buy a house, they'd stay in that community, their kids would grow up. And so you could have, you could teach reading in a different way in this elementary school than that elementary school. Well, families are much more transient now, and particularly the kids that we want to reach. And so if you have, a third grader moving from this elementary school to that elementary school, and there are different ways of teaching reading, you can't do that anymore. You have to be able to respond to what's happening today.
Right. Yeah. One of the issues that just sticks in my head about both of you, though, is, for example, libraries. The commitment to libraries that the Community Foundation made. And now the role that libraries play in communities, in neighborhoods. It's just one of those things that this Generation Z, I think, have different perspectives on that, but they remain really important fundamentals in community building.
Absolutely they do. And librarians are some of our best partners. So not only the infrastructure and the books and the computers access, but also places to gather, places to have outreach into schools, into community centers. And it's becoming just a wonderful, the mobile libraries now that are going around across the community. New ways of doing institutional kinds of, core solid work, but in new refreshing ways that meet people where they're at and actually get them the education, the system, the resources they need in real time.
Well, I know that the part of the work here is not necessarily responding to change, but anticipating change. And I hope when we come back, you'll talk a little bit about what you see coming up right after this.
Growing up, your memories may have included reading your favorite book before bed. For many, this is where the joy of reading starts.
At Bella Domicile, we want every child to experience that joy.
And it's Madison Reading Project's mission to make sure that all children have that same opportunity.
Please donate to help us provide 40,000 books to children and help sustain our Big Red Reading Bus.
For more information, visit MadisonReadingProject.com.
Brought to you by Bella Domicile and United Madison.
With the flexibility of a monthly credit to spend on the over-the-counter drugs you need, an iCare Zero Premium Health Plan is more than just insurance benefits. If you're on Medicare and Medicaid, call today to see if you qualify for the iCare Medicare plan.
Madison Bike Week is underway. We'll tell you how you can get involved and even go on a bike ride with the mayor.
And with the summer vacation right around the corner, how you can avoid becoming a victim of some common summer scams. We'll see you Monday morning from 4:30 to 7.
A local hospital's most vulnerable patients, all in good hands.
You really are making a difference, in a child's life.
Why local volunteers are willing to wait years for a spot on the cuddling crew.
It's just incredibly rewarding.
Monday on News 3 Now at 10. Away from your TV, News 3 Now is constantly providing breaking news, weather alerts, and updated information on all your favorite social media sites. Follow, friend, subscribe. News 3 Now. We're always on.
Be bold, be fearless, be more than pink. Join News 3 Now at this year's Komen South Central Wisconsin More Than Pink Walk.
Our course starts and ends on Willow Island at the Alliant Energy Center.
The money we raised helps breast cancer patients right here, many with limited incomes and insurance.
Register and raise funds or donate at KomenWisconsin.org and turn your support into action June 8th at the Komen More Than Pink Walk.
There's something about the forest, hiking through the woods, looking up to the treetops,
Forests bring people together, feed the soul, and improve our well-being, cleaning the air we breathe, the water we need, making our climate livable. Fires and natural disasters devastate our forests each year. That's why the Arbor Day Foundation is working to replant millions of trees across the country. The time to act is now. The forest needs us. Visit arborday.org and see how you can help.
I am back with Renee, the president and CEO of United Way of Dane County, and Bob Sorge, the president of the Madison Community Foundation, as we talk about how the two organizations are working together. So clearly, change prompts new ways of thinking about how you function. But I also think both of you are particularly skilled at anticipating what's coming and seeing what's coming. And for a lot of us, we see the changes in this community happening very rapidly.
Yeah.
Talk about how that is influencing your thinking.
Well, growth is on our minds.
Yeah.
And when we look at population growth, so we're projected to be at over 600,000 in Dane County by 2040. And as you think about the infrastructure needs and the changes in the social fabric of the community, what does that look like? The priority thing that we're seeing right now is access to housing that people can afford. So we have a lot of folks working in a job, 2 jobs, 3 jobs, and it's becoming harder and harder for them to afford apartments. And so looking at how do we bridge together and knit together a strategy across our community that anticipates the workforce needs that our businesses have, the economy needs, as well as making sure people have a stable place to call home. Yeah. The other pieces are how education is transforming, how we're doing things differently. You're a great supporter of Schools of Hope and our Achievement Connections work and tutoring in schools, looking at how are we building out teletutoring, how are we making sure that as schools are transforming to meet the needs of our society in the future, that we're having the programs and supports with technology and STEM and those focus areas, in addition to the core skills, that social emotional learning and the core reading, writing capabilities that people need. And so all of those things are on the horizon as we see these changes happening.
Yeah. Do you see diversity and inclusion issues making their way into people's philanthropic goals?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's a priority. And, like a lot of communities, we have our challenges and we have to address them head on. We have to be honest about them, and we have to embrace them, and we have to work on them. One of the things that we've been talking about from the education and learning standpoint is, there are lots of ideas about where to plug in. And we really need a clear roadmap. We were talking about, Madison's out of school time. So kids at that level, we anticipate there'd be about $25 million to have every child who wants out of school time to be able to participate in that out of school time.
That's what it would require, is $25 million. Yeah.
But so there's that segment, but there's also early childhood, and that's where United Way focuses, and there's a lot of literature about the critical nature of having kids ready when they get to school. And so, where do we plug in? How can we plug in together? Some of that might be policy change because again, we're proud of the resources we bring to the table. At the same time, these are tens of millions of dollars over decades that have to be invested, and that is at the policy level often.
Yeah.
Of course, both some of the opportunities and pressures are spilling over county lines.
Yeah.
I mean, and we're all feeling that.
Yeah.
Yep.
But the Madison Community Foundation's reach has for a while now extended to communities outside of Madison.
Yeah, when I was brought to the Community Foundation, that was really my role, was to take what we've been doing well in Madison and take it throughout and beyond Dane County to build community foundations in other communities with the idea that, one, we can provide the back office services on day one. Otherwise you have volunteers that check the P.O. box every other week or something like that, and they just don't grow as fast. But two, recognizing that we're a region, that people do, again, in 1950, people lived and worked in the same community. In 2019, they often work in Madison and live in Sun Prairie or Columbus or wherever it may be. And so their quality of life is dependent on these communities being strong. We are a region. We have to work together as a region. And so that doesn't start at arbitrary political lines. The county.
And maybe reframing it just a little bit, outside of Madison, the communities surrounding Madison are growing as fast as the city.
Absolutely. You see the growth in Sun Prairie.
With similar challenges.
Very similar challenges. 211's a great example of that. So, we are now able to have a statewide and even a national network. So United Way 211 is now helping with all the opioid recovery addiction referrals, as well as trafficking. Those are some of the newer issues that we're seeing across Dane County and the state. And I think those kinds of attention to the regional communities, people might be driving into Madison for work, but you have other businesses growing. And so, doing that specific work, that Sun Prairie specific, where people have that sense of place and sense of community in Wanakee and DeForest and Oregon, all of those things, very important to thinking about the health and stability of our community in the long term.
Yeah. This is important to me, but the relationships that we have in this community, the relationships that you two have with the chambers of commerce, and I mean, including the growing Latino and Black chambers of commerce,
absolutely,
with the school districts and the people who are leading them, and now we have a new mayor and even a new governor who might look at Madison a little differently. I always consider that part of our strengths.
It is a strength. Absolutely, it's a strength. And the good news is we're talking to each other. And if you're looking at how do you network together law enforcement, we have so many jurisdictions across Dane County and the region. Same thing with school districts. Everyone has got its own culture. And so to be able to understand, what are individual priorities, where do we line, and how do we, as Bob was talking about, align those resources to get more done for the long term, that's the opportunity.
Yeah.
Well, not only is diversity, equity, and inclusion important from a moral standpoint, it's important from a community development standpoint.
Absolutely.
We were just at a conference recently, and they were talking about diversity in all its forms, that businesses that have diversity within them have a 15% stronger bottom line across the board. Our community is only going to grow and really flourish if we take advantage of everybody in our community and to make it strong.
Yeah. Well, can people find this report online somewhere?
Yes, it's on our website under frequently asked questions.
Yeah,
and on ours as well.
Okay, all right. I thought it was really interesting. I appreciate you taking the time to come talk about it.
Thanks for having us.
We're going to come back and wrap up For the Record right after this.
At Menards, nobody beats our selection, and you'll save big money on your home's exterior. Check out Menards' huge selection of landscape blocks. Crust stone retaining wall blocks have a rough texture similar to natural stone. They're just 88 cents each after rebate. Get the last roof you'll ever need with ProSnap Steel Roofing. Available in 25 colors. Just $144 a square foot. Plus, a Menards gift card is perfect for Father's Day.
Save big money at Menards.
On the next Live Before, Dr. Zorba Pastor takes your medical calls live.
And our Will Loper will tell us what he thinks of the new Elton John biopic, Rocket Man.
Wisconsin weather is constantly changing. Get detailed weather and traffic reports from the News 3 Now team. On air, online, and download the Channel 3000 First Alert app and be the first to know what's headed our way. Join News 3 Now, Dragonfly Hot Yoga, and the Lung Cancer Research Foundation Saturday, June 15th for Free to Breathe Yoga. It's a one-of-a-kind event where teams fundraise to earn their spot for a day of yoga, wellness activities, and community. Teams honor those who have been diagnosed with lung cancer while celebrating health and the power of breath. Please help us raise much-needed research funds and improve lung cancer outcomes. Go to lcrf.org/Madison to register.
What does it look like when a life is truly changed?
I feel a sense of accomplishment because I built a house. This house has brought us financial independence.
Every family dreams to have their own house. This house changed our lives.
Habitat for Humanity is at work in your community and around the world. Through shelter, we empower.
My thanks to Renee Moe and Bob Sorge, and to you for joining us. We'll see you next week on For the Record.